absolutely stunning photographs. I never seen the posterior capsule after hydrodissection and
I agree. It's really good.
Thank
Good.
you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
But the bottom line is that all of us should increase our skill. So we should have a PCR only when we have a pre-existing dehiscence. When you have excluded patients with where it has protruded into the patella fossa, ideally you should not have any PCR or vitreous loss. You should have been able to put in the back. This is just a common. This is where you are heading, doctor. But amazing photographs. Thank you for sharing, doctor.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Can we have the next speaker, please? Can you stop sharing, ma? Thank you. We'll go back to the regular FP132 is there. He was right. FP132.
Please note FP132. Hello, please load FP132.
Hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Can you share your slides?
Yeah.
This is FP 132.
132.
Yes.
Morning, I'm Colonel Gaurav Kapoor. I'm the Senior Advisor of Opthal in Command Hospital, Western Command, Chandi Mandir. May I start, sir?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. This is an evaluation of the safety profile of new design of angled chopper and dialer. Coming back to a background, this was presented at AIOC 20 at Apple Tree and the free paper, and it was the best paper in cataract session and among the top 5 innovations at under the Apple Tree. And a patent for this has also been published. Now, that time we had just presented the design concept and the initial manufacturing which had taken place and what was the whole idea behind it. Now we have the safety data of this and the evaluation over the last 2 to 3 years. So basically, phacoemulsification, we all know, just a brief background, surgeon experience is the most important factor, and the rate of vitreous complications over various studies has been 2 to 14%. What is important here is, as teachers, it's higher with first-year residents or beginners, and the complications occur in both the types. Either you do a chop or a stop and chop or a divide and conquer, you still have complications. Unsupervised surgeries tend to have higher complications. What is important to note here is that the most number of complications, 70%, take place during this one step of phacoemulsification. So with this aim in mind, we had 2 simple design changes to make. The aim was to improve the safety profile, reduce complications, and increase the efficacy and efficiency of chopping. So there were 2 simple design changes which were made. There was a 110-degree forward angulation which was given and a 20-degree sideways angulation to increase the efficiency of chopping by aligning the 2 axes. Basic physics principle, you align the 2 axes, you get increased, you get a addition of power. So this was the final design which was produced. The chopper had a side angulation of 20 degrees and a forward angulation of 110 degrees, which was present only on the dialer. The dialer did not have a sideway angulation. So as you can see, minimal effort is required to chop even a very hard nucleus, and the efficiency and efficacy of the chopping increases dramatically. So the aim was to compare the complication rates, phaco times amongst various groups in our center, that is residents, 2nd and 3rd year, senior residents and junior surgeons, and in the experienced surgeons. So what we did was we divided them into 3 groups, residents, in which there were 385 cases, in which all the cases were done using peribulbar surgery, all were 2.8 mm phacos and on the Alcon Infinity. But here there were only grade 2 and 3 cataracts. Senior resident and junior surgeons, again the similar grade 2 and 3 cataracts, peribulbar, However, there were transition from stop and chop to direct chop. Here there were 1234 cases, and experienced surgeons had all grades of cataract. This was all done under topical anesthesia, and there were 1876 cases. So if we come to the results, what you'll notice is group A is the one using the traditional dialer and chopper, and the group B is the new design of dialer and chopper. So what is evident here is that the phaco times drop. This is not very significant. However, the drop in complication rates, that is the PCR rates, if you notice the percentage, almost a 50% drop in PCR rates in the residents. These are the beginners, the second and third year residents undergoing MS program. Amongst the senior residents and the junior surgeons, the total cases in the traditional group was 596 and in the other group 698. Here the phaco time dropped from 9.67 to 7.54, and again a drop in the PCR rates, which was again clinically significant. In the senior surgeon group, the cases were 924 and 952 respectively. The phaco time did not see much of a change, 4.7 to 3.4. Obviously, this is to be expected because we're already dealing with a group with advanced phaco techniques, experienced surgeons. And the PCR rate also, the drop was not significant in terms of p-value, although there was a drop in PCR numbers, absolute numbers. What is important here now, if you notice what has been highlighted, is the use of the chopper amongst the first group and the second group dropped dramatically. That means the design of the dialer is such that it permits even grade 3-4 cataract to be done using a dialer. So the reduction in the chopper usage is there. This is what also adds on to the reduction in the PCR rates and the complication rates. So phaco times and PCR rates were in line with the worldwide data. There is a significant improvement in both with the use of the angle chopper and dialer. What it helps here is in transition to phaco in young surgeons, the complication rates have been reduced quite a bit. And it also helps in the transition from stop and chop to direct chop. Now, the basic advantages, as you see, of the angulation are it improves the safety profile, the reduced complications, transition to chopping, and it helps in hard cataracts. Dialer effectively becomes a chopper replacement. In certain grades of cataract, you can use it even up to grade 3-4 nucleus. This is because of the forward angulation and the increased length of the tip. And it has an increased safety profile because of its distance from the PC, and it is useful for beginners and in learners who are making the transition to phacoemulsification or changing their techniques. Thank you.
Sir, any questions?
Yes, I have a question if you don't mind. My question is that PCR is directly related to the length of the chopper and the sharpness of the chopper.
Yes, sir.
So you're demonstrating a sharp chopper.
Yes, sir.
So how will the angulation make a difference? It's the chord length that matters, isn't it?
Yes, sir. If I may, the forward angulation is what makes a difference. The forward angulation is 110 degrees. This increases the distance from the PC. As you bend the tip forward, it moves higher up. So the tip is further away from the PC. This is what is helping. And the second is the sideways angulation aligns the axis of the chopper to the axis of the phacoemulsification. So the amount of force required to do the chop reduces over a period of time. So this is what actually reduces the complication rates. The distance from the PC has increased dramatically because of the forward angulation. The side angulation reduces the force, not the safety profile.
Thank you so much, doctor. That is a very nice presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Can you stop sharing your slides? And the next slide is ready. Next person is ready.
Next is Dr. Rohit Baum, on number 275.
Rohit Baum, yeah. You can start.
275, please load. Come on.
Yes.
Can't hear you. Yeah.
Your audio is bad.
Dr. Rohit, I'll request you to please unmute yourself.
Okay,
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yeah, you can start, Dr. Rohit.
Yeah.
Which paper is this?
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Rohit.
Yeah, 1 minute. ये full screen नहीं हो रहा है.
Start, Dr. Rohit. Your timer is on.
1 minute.
We can come back to you.
Is it okay now?
Everything is okay. You have to start your presentation.
Please proceed. It is okay now.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Rohit Bang and I'm discussing here outcomes of cataract surgery in a patient with Fuchs endothelial dystrophy. So no financial disclosures as such. We all know Fuchs endothelial corneal dystrophy. It's characterized by gutted changes on the endothelium causing decreased endothelial pump function, resulting in corneal edema with a glare and halos and ultimately resulting in decreased vision. When confronted with a Fuchs endothelial corneal dystrophy and it is accompanied with a cataract, the changes, it becomes difficult to decide if the symptoms are due to cataract or endothelial decompensation, and whether to do a plain cataract surgery would help in resolving the patient's symptoms. The aim of study was to get a guideline for decision making in these patients for cataract surgery alone, or we need to go with a combined procedure in the form of phaco-IOL DMEK for a visual rehabilitation. This is just a slit lamp photograph of how the gutted changes looks like. The specular images, we all know it from the healthy endothelial mosaic to the pleomorphism, then the polymegathism and gutted changes, how the endothelium decompensates. So how did this study go about? It was a study of 164 eyes of 150 patients who were prospectively analyzed over a period of 21 months. And the selection criteria were presence of a Fuchs endothelial dystrophy, which was not associated with morning blur, and a central corneal thickness less than 630 microns. The criteria were assessed at 1 week, 1 month, and 3 months interval following an uneventful phacoemulsification surgery. And the various criteria that were specifically looked for was a central corneal thickness or a CCT, best corrected visual acuity, and endothelial cell counts. It was a how did this study go about? It was a clear corneal temporal phacoemulsification, which was done by a single surgeon under topical anesthesia, and a soft shell technique was used to protect the endothelium using a dispersive and cohesive viscoelastic material. The grade of cataract surgery and phaco energy utilized were noted but not used in statistical analysis. And topical steroids in a tapering dose along with antibiotic and hyperosmotic agents were given postoperatively for all the patients. Looking at the results, as you can see, the pre-op BCVA was to the tune of around 0.4 logmar units, and it improved to around 0.15 logmar units after the surgery. And however, the central corneal thickness or the mean central corneal thickness, it was around 572 microns preoperatively, and postoperatively it was around 585 microns. The endothelial cell count, the mean preoperative endothelial cell count was around 1604, and mean endothelial cell counts postoperatively, which was measured at 1 month, was around 1312 square millimeters. Out of 164 eyes undergoing cataract surgery, 34 eyes or 22% of the eyes, they required an endothelial keratoplasty due to poor BCVA after cataract surgery, and this decision was taken at the end of 3 months. As you can see in a pie chart, of those 164 eyes, 130 patients didn't require any further intervention. And the mean pachymetry who's required an endothelial keratoplasty, it was in the tune of 595 microns, and the patients who didn't require any further intervention or no endothelial keratoplasty later was in the tune of 564 microns. So this was the mean pre-operative pachymetry that we had. So 3 months after the cataract surgery, the decision to proceed with the DMEK was based on the persistence of suboptimal visual function despite cataract surgery without any other concomitant ocular pathology which could impair the patient's vision. So what we conclude is, obviously there is no objective gold standard to guide whether to proceed with a plain cataract surgery or a combined procedure in a patient of Fuchs endothelial dystrophy. The decision has to be normally taken by the surgeon based on the obvious corneal edema, significant gutted changes, or a raised central corneal thickness and a gross quality of visual impairment. Our findings, however, suggest that the pre-op central corneal thickness, when it is less than 600 microns, it allows almost 78% of eyes of Fuchs corneal endothelial dystrophy to obtain a good visual outcome after cataract surgery alone if it is done with a minimal phaco energy utilization. Higher the preoperative central corneal thickness at presentation with a guttae, higher likelihood of requiring a endothelial keratoplasty in a future. Thank you.
I have a question. It's a
Yes,
good
sir. Yes, ma'am.
presentation. What was the role of age in your series? Because I didn't see the mention of age, because it's an important criterion to go by, because the future endothelial loss, which not only depend upon the original condition, will also depend upon the age of the patient and of course the operative parameters.
Obviously, age is a very important factor, but here what we were focused was when there was significant gutted changes or a diagnosed case of Fuchs corneal endothelial dystrophy, and these were all a senile cataract. So I didn't mention here the age as such, but all were the senile patients were more than 60 years of age that we were dealing with.
So which irrigating
that's-
solution, there's no mention about that, and the grade of cataract also, that would make difference.
Yes, definitely. As a routine, we are using BSS for all the cataract surgeries. And the grade of a cataract surgery, it ranges from grade 2 to grade 3 as such. But as a default, we are using a BSS for all our cataract surgeries.
What is the innovation in this?
It helps us to understand that all patients, like whenever we are confronted with a Fuchs endothelial dystrophy along with the cataract surgery, there's always a dilemma that whether to combine. We get a process from a general physician, general ophthalmologist, that whether we can proceed with a plain cataract surgery or better to intervene in a form of a phaco-IOL or with a DMEC or a triple surgery. So it signifies that not only the specular counts, but if the corneal thickness is less than 600 microns at presentation, the chances of requiring endothelial keratoplasty might be less. In 80% of patients, you can just go ahead and get a cataract surgery done, and chances of requiring a DMEC are very less.
Okay, thank you.
Doctor, just a quick comment, if I may, Doctor. Doctor, two things are predict whether you need to have a DMEC or not. One is pre-op 600 micron. That cutoff has been published numerous times. Then the next thing is early morning blur. Patients who complain of early morning blur are more likely to need a DMEC procedure. But the endothelial count per se doesn't matter. Thanks, Doctor.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next presentation.
Dr. Bhartikar, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I have a request. Actually, I am a judge in the Parson Hall. So I have come here for my presentation, if you allow me. I am Dr. Shroff.
Sure, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, which paper is yours?
My paper is effective phaco. My paper number is 1834.
Serial number 9, sir. Yeah, you can go ahead, sir.
Okay.
How are the others panelists okay with it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let's finish.
Yes, sir. Yes. Share your screen.
Next is Dr. Bhartikar, sir. Please load the paper number 856.
I'm there.
Sir, can I start?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody, sir. See, my presentation is effective phaco in cataract with corneal opacity with indigenous LED chandelier light source. And at the outset, I would like to thank scientific committee for allowing me to share my experience. The surgery is difficult in cases of cataract with corneal opacity, particularly central or paracentral, nebulomacular, where the corneal graft is not required because a long-standing opacity and the patients have lived long for so many years. In such cases, the problem is poor visibility. But the moonlight phaco, when it has come into the existence, the scope where you put the scope light off and illuminate the chopper and put it into the anterior chamber, because it gives you better illumination of structures in the anterior chamber, and that's why you see better. In these 36 cases of long-standing mild to moderate corneal opacity with advanced cataract were included. The cataract grade was 3 to 4. and mean IOP was normal. Central corneal opacity was in 26 eyes and the central and paracentral in 10 eyes. Then of late we have been using chandelier light source to Bart's plana because it illuminates the whole vitreous cavity, which gives excellent glow in the pupillary area. You can see here, sir, the first picture, the first video. There is a little paracentral opacity with the cataract grade 3, and this is the moment the skip light is off, the chandelier light is being introduced to Bart's plana. This is the trocar which has been introduced, and now the chandelier light source is introduced through the trocar, and it is adjusted in such a way that it gives you uniform glow in the pupillary area. Now you can see that. The scope light is put off, the rhexis is made. It is to better visualization. It is advised to do the staining first and then do the rhexis, so that gives you a little better clarity. Now the hydration is done. You can see that the lens has been bulged up, and now that it is rotated. Again, you can see that the scope light is off, and what you see here, see now is that the scope light is little on and the chandelier light is also on. So the visibility is little poor, but once you see the scope light is off, the visibility improves. You can see that. And here the corneal opacity is just a little shadow here, what you see in the chandelier light source. The cracking, emulsification, everything becomes so easy. And now see, the most important part is you can use both the hands, both the instruments. You can use the chopper, you can use bimanual, you can use single, the coaxial. And once the cortex is removed, now you can put the scope light on and see the very good red glow. And here the lens is being implanted. You can do that, and you can dial it. If it is not, the visibility is not good, then you can dial it in the chandelier light source, putting the scope light off. It goes into the bag. It is better you do little sphincterotomy, and this is all it ends here. Then we have another situation where you can see the corneal opacity is very dense, maybe post-infection. Here the options are, first you go for the corneal graft, then you do the cataract, or you can do the cataract graft and the corneal graft and the cataract extraction with our triple procedure together. But here we have done the phaco first, because what I feel that once you do the phaco, put the lens, and then you do the graft, it is always better, because then you don't need any surgery. You can see the same patient is very thick corneal opacity. The pupil is not getting dilated. The capsule care has been used to retract to enlarge the pupil. You can see the beautiful glow. And again, same way, the sculpting is done. And then so easy, good. See, that was now the scope light is also put off. See, the clarity is so good that you don't even feel that there is a corneal opacity. Though we know it's very thick corneal opacity there. Dialing is done, cracking is done. And then at the end, you can put the lens into the bag. In these cases, the rhexis was good in 14 eyes, but little bit becomes irregular or large or little small in 22 eyes. There was small intraoperative PCR in 2 cases. In all cases, foldable aspheric hydrophobic lenses were put in the bag in 17 cases and in the circle in 19 cases. The visual acuity was better as expected. It was less than 636.
So time over.
So we have used the endogenous source here, sir. When the scope light is off, it gives you super illumination, procedure becomes easy, complications are less, and anatomical and visual recovery is very satisfactory. In these cases, again, the intraoperative complications very few, and post-operative period was good with reasonably good visual recovery. Thank you very much, sir.
I guess this doesn't apply to dense cataracts, doctor, because this illumination.
No, sir, I think
Because-
we can try. We can try.
You know, it's difficult anyway. So I just wanted, what kind of refractive error did you get after the surgery? Because often we get quite some astigmatism rather than, that is the issue rather than the density of the opacity.
Yes, yes. It is all the refraction depends on the corneal surface, no? So it has to be bound to be, and that's why this point should be covered during the counseling. It's very important that whichever best surgery you do, there will be residual refractive error and the patient may need glasses.
I understand it's not just ordinary refractive error. I thought it's quite some highly irregular astigmatism, which might even, which might
we have
actually
observed the maximum cylinder was 3. We have observed in our series, it was 3.
Okay, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you.
One
Okay,
question, sir.
fine.
This is from which company, sir? You sent earlier light.
This is some, I don't know, somewhere in the,
Okay.
but it is made in India. That's for sure.
Thank you, doctors. Time's up. Can we move on to the next speaker?
Yes, yes.
टाइम देख रहे हैं
Dr. Bharati, ma'am, you
Yes,
can
I'm
share
there.
it. Hello. You can share, ma'am. We can go.
Which is the next paper?
Bill number 5, ma'am. Dr. Bharati Kashyap. Yes, ma'am. We can start.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am, you're
Yeah,
audible.
my topic is comparative analysis of contrast sensitivity, listening, and visual outcomes in 2 novel monofocal IOLs. I have no financial interest, and the purpose is to present clinical data of contrast sensitivity, glistening, and visual outcomes after implantation of a new non-diffractive EDOF intraocular lens. Technique IHANS ICB00 IOL in comparison with the new monofocal hydrophobic acrylic IOL Autonomy Clarion. The method was it was a non-randomized comparative study of 100 eyes, 50 patients with cataract and no other ocular or neurological comorbidities undergoing cataract surgery by a single surgeon for equal number of eyes in both the group at Tertiary Eye Hospital in India. 2 groups of total 50 patients had bilateral implantation of 2 monofocal IOLs. Group 1, new non-diffractive EDOF monofocal IOL, techniques IHANS ICB00, 25 patients and 50 eyes. Group 2, new monofocal hydrophobic acrylic IOL, Autonomy Clarion, 25 patients, 50 eyes. The parameters assessed were post-op parameters at 90 days and uncorrected distance, intermediate and near visual acuity, binocular defocus curve, spherical equivalent, spectacle independence, distance, intermediate 60 centimeter, near 40 centimeter, grades of glistening, 0, no, 1 mild, 2 moderate, and 3 severe, and contrast sensitivity, photopeak and mesopeak. The inclusion criteria were age between 50 to 75, corneal astigmatism equal to or less than 0.75, corneal endothelial cell count greater than 2000, power of IOL was between 20 diopter to 23.5, wrist weight excluded, and in the bag implantation was done. Exclusion criteria was previous ocular trauma or intraocular surgery, irregular astigmatism, corneal dystrophy, history of glaucoma or intraocular inflammation, macular disease or retinopathy, neuro-ophthalmic disease, intraoperative or postoperative complication. The comparative analysis of preoperative factors were comparable in the term of age, gender, axial length, preoperative myopic sphere, preoperative hyperopic sphere, and pre-op cylinder. The group statistics and t-test for equality of means for distance between group 1 and group 2 showed similar result and difference was non-significant. P was 1. The group statistics and t-test for equality of means for intermediate vision at 60 centimeter between group 1 and 2 shows UBIA significantly better in group 1 ICB00, P was 0. And group statistics and t-test for equality or means for uncorrected near visual acuity for group 1 and group 2 showed similar result, and difference was non-significant. P was 0.78. The post-op spherical equivalent and residual astigmatism show comparable results between group 1 new non-diffractive EDOF monofocal IOL and group 2 new monofocal hydrophobic acrylic IOL autonomy Clarion. This is the comparison of the glistening among the two between the two groups, and it was no glistening was found in 41% in group 1, 40% in group 2, mild glistening 51% in group 1, 50% in group 2, and severe glistening was found in 8% in group 1 and 10% in group 2. Glistening was also comparable, but then it was more in group 2, that is Clarion. This is the table showing group statistics of the two group, and this is the t-test applied for equality of means, and it shows that the photopic condition there was no statistical significance between group 1 ICP00 and group 2 Clarion at 7 and 90 days. But when the same was applied for mesopic contrast sensitivity at 5, 10 and 15 CPD, the group 1, that is the ICP00, was significantly better, statistically significantly better than group 2, that was Clarion, at 7 and 90 days, at 5, 10 and 15 CPD. The monoocular defocus curve is significantly better in ICP00 group 1 at 1 diopter, 1.5 diopter and 2 diopter. The graph line chart with error bar for binocular defocus curve showed ICP00 group 1 has significantly better vision at versions of 1, 1.5 and 2. P less than 0.05 and non-significant at 2.5, P was 0.053. So its spectacle independence at 60 centimeter was significantly more in group 1 for intermediate distance activities, and spectacle independence score for intermediate activities was better in group 1 for all those intermediate activities: seeing price tag while shopping, walking downstairs, computer work, playing golf and table tennis, cooking and eating. But both the group had minimal halos and glare during nighttime driving, but group 1 ICP00 implanted patients were highly satisfied in intermediate nighttime activities, use of car navigation system and music system during nighttime driving, and all those activities which is related to the mesopic contrast. So what was known is new monofocal IOL provides high quality distance vision and improved intermediate vision compared with the conventional aspheric monofocal IOL. What this study adds is, in low light condition, the contrast sensitivity and visual function are significantly better in novel non-diffractive EDOF monofocal IOL technology. Hence, it can be adopted as a standard monofocal lens. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment, please? Dr. Bharati, that was a very nice presentation. Thank you for presenting the paper. I wish you had shared some pictures of the glistenings that you saw, because the literature does not show equal glistenings in the Technis material and the Acrosoft material. There's a big difference in the number of patients with glistening in Acrosoft material as compared to Technis material.
This is a new type of Acrosoft, that is Clarion, and Clarion has less glistening as compared to what we see in the IQ, the earlier Acrosoft. This Acrosoft is has lot of advancement, and it definitely has much less glistening as compared to the earlier Acrosoft, that is IQ. So
you're absolutely right, doctor. I'm not commenting on the Acrosoft material. I'm commenting on the Eyhance, where you said
Eyhance had less glistening in this study.
How many of them had glistening, doctor, in the Eyhance?
Very less. I can go to back.
Because it should normally be 0. In Technis material, we get 1 in several hundred. We don't get, if you do 50 or 100, you don't see glistenings in Technis material. But otherwise, a fantastic.
I saw in a few cases a mild glistening.
I wish you could have shared a photograph. Thank you, doctor.
And also, this should have
Sorry,
been
doctors.
double blind.
Move ahead, we'll move ahead, sir.
Sorry, doctors, the time is up.
Yes, yes, go to the next.
Next is Dr. Sasoli.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 122.
You can start your presentation, Dr. Salam.
Yes, sir. Just 1 second. It's not going to the slide. Yeah. Good morning to one and all present here. I'm truly grateful to AIOC for this opportunity. The topic for my study is the repeatability and agreement of the new multimodal imaging platform, Antirion, with ILMaster 700 and Lenstar 900. Biometry is measuring the various dimensions of the eye. The interrelationship between axial length, K readings, corneal thickness, lens thickness are all very crucial to correct the eye power. Biometry is a field that has seen immense evolution in the last 2 decades and progressively advanced from the contact ultrasound technique to immersion biometry to the optical biometry that we use today. At our center, we have the Lenstar 900 based on low coherence optical reflectometry, ILMaster 700 by Carl Zeiss based on SwepSource OCT, and a new device that has been introduced into the market, the Antirion by Heidelberg Engineering based on SwepSource OCT, the wavelength of 1300 nanometers. Antirion is a multimodal imaging platform, all-in-one stop solution for all our cataract and refractive purposes. There are 4 apps that can be utilized. The cataract app, which takes 4 scans during one measurement and incorporates it into the calculations of biometry for varied IL power. It is based on an optimized SwepSource OCT technology that allows for accurate measurements and visual confirmation with high-resolution images. The ability to assess the total corneal power leads to a more suitable IOL selection. So where do we stand in our delivery of accurate results in 100% of the cases? So the study objective was to compare the repeatability of ocular biometry measured with the Lenstar LS900 and ILMaster 700 with Antirion to assess the impact of repeatability of ocular biometry on the calculated IL power. Materials and methods. A study included 127 eyes of 76 patients. Ethics committee approval was obtained and informed consent taken from all the participants. The inclusion criteria was patients with all grades of cataract. The exclusion criteria included patients with media opacity, including corneal opacity and the vitreous hemorrhage, retinal pathology like the posterior staphyloma, CME, or if the patient was unable to sit, or any uncooperative patients. All these patients underwent visual acuity and intraocular pressure measurement. They underwent a thorough anterior segment evaluation. Fundus examination was completed. The participants were subjected to biometric evaluation using the 3 machines, and 3 scans were taken on each machine. These machines were selected in the random order using a table of random numbers. A single trained operator using the same illumination used all the 3 scans. The following were the parameters that we assessed. The formula used for all the calculations was Barrett Universal 2. The IL power for emetropia was evaluated for the Technis IOL with an A constant of 119.3. A detailed statistical analysis was completed. It was carried out using the MedCal. A p-value of less than 0.05 was considered to be statistically significant. The repeatability was assessed using the 3 parameters, that is within subject standard deviation, test-retest repeatability, and within subject coefficient of variance. The level of agreement between the 3 instruments was evaluated according to the method described by Bland and Altman. The results of the 76 patients that we had, 65% were males and 34% were females. The average age of the population was 62 years. Going to the detailed results, within subject standard deviation showed minimum variation, that is the maximum repeatability in the Lenstar. Similarly, even for test-retest repeatability, it was highest for Lenstar when compared to Antirion and the ILMaster. Sorry. Interclass correlation showed a good agreement for all the 3 machines. Except for IOL Master, as seen in the orange one, the WTW and the Lenstar had a moderate agreement. This is a comparison for IOL Master. Hence, interclass correlation with each machine showed high repeatability with 3 repeated measurements with all the machines. The IOL power calculation was best for Antirion and slightly low for best for Lenstar and slightly low for Antirion as compared to the other 2 machines. So validation of new machine against any gold standard helps us to establish its usage as a standalone machine, and its repeatability ensures that we understand the extent to which the variability can be attributed to the machine error. It also provides normative data incorporate for the future. So what was known that IOL Master and Lenstar are well-validated optical biometers, and Antirion is a new addition to the group of optical biometers. So repeatability with Antirion was excellent. Agreement between these biometers and the predicted IOL power indicated an excellent result between the IOL Master and Lenstar. However, the agreement with the predicted IOL power by Antirion was relatively inferior to the other 2 biometers. The future work can be related to ICL studies using the Antirion, and the future work regarding topography as can be evaluated further. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I have a question.
Yes.
Did you have all your patients in the same axial length parameter? Because you a lot of influence of axial length, preoperative axial length, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you have not mentioned in that thing. It's very important criteria.
Yes, ma'am. I have already had the table. I have not incorporated here.
But that's a very important thing which we need to.
Yes, ma'am. Axial length will affect the IOL power the most.
Yeah.
So it was all the 3 machines had a similar range, and it was statistically insignificant.
And which did you consider in your as a gold standard? Because you can say something is reliable only if you have a gold standard. Is there a gold standard, or is it a post-operative final result which becomes the gold standard?
No, ma'am. So you already have done a previous study from a same institute based on IOL Master and Lenstar. So we have taken Lenstar as a gold standard because we have, according to our study, we have got the best repeatability with the Lenstar machine. So even today, we use Lenstar as a gold standard at our institute.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go to the next.
Thank you. There is no other questions. We can move to the next step. We can give a chance to the first speakers as they come. Dr. Swati, paper FP75. FP75, the first speaker.
No, we'll ask at the end, sir.
Okay. Now we can go ahead then.
Good morning, all of you. I'm Dr. Shalini Singh. I'm presenting my topic, comparative clinical trial of intracameral ropivacaine versus lignocaine in subjects undergoing phacoemulsification under augmented topical anesthesia. I have nil financial disclosure. Phacoemulsification under topical anesthesia is one of the most popular method of cataract removal currently. Augmentation of topical anesthesia with intracameral anesthesia makes surgery less painful with better patient comfort. Lignocaine and ropivacaine can be used as an intracameral agent. The purpose of our study is to compare the safety and efficacy of intracameral ropivacaine 0.1% to lignocaine 1% in patients undergoing phacoemulsification under augmented topical anesthesia for uncomplicated senile cataract. Method, this was the prospective randomized double-masked clinical trial. Subjects were planned for phacoemulsification under augmented topical anesthesia. The patients taken were having visually significant uncomplicated senile cataract. Patients were randomized into 2 groups. Group A consists of ropivacaine 0.1% and Group B was consisting of ropivacaine, lignocaine 1%. Patients were evaluated for pain experienced during the surgery, mydriasis, post-operative inflammation, and endothelial cell change at 6 weeks after surgery. Pain was evaluated, and the patient for pain evaluation, patients were instructed to inform verbally about any discomfort or pain during that step of the surgery instantly. And at the end of the surgery, visual analog score was given to the patient to report their pain experience by making an appropriate point. This was the visual analog score. Preoperative mydriasis was done by 0.8% tropicamide and 5% phenylephrine eye drops. Intracameral injections was also given and the mydriasis was also noted down after intracameral injections. Post-operative inflammation was noted on the basis of standardization of uveitis nomenclature, and patients were graded accordingly. For endothelial cell change, specular microscopy photographs were taken by Conan SP 8000 specular microscope, and endothelial cell density was noted at the time of the surgery and after 6 weeks after surgery. For surgeons' feedback, a questionnaires were also prepared, and the points taken in questionnaires were patient cooperation, difficulty due to ocular movements, and anterior chamber stability. Complication during the surgery was also noted down, and if there was any complication present, then that patient was excluded from the surgery. Pre-operative pupillary dilatation and dilatation of pupil after intracameral injection was also noted down. Total sample size taken was 210. Around 26 patients were excluded. So 184 patients were randomized into 2 groups. Group A was given ropivacaine 0.1% and group B was given lignocaine 1%. 2 patients lost to follow-up in group A and 3 patients in group B. So total analyzed patient in group A were 90 and in group B were 89. Results showed no statistical significant difference in between 2 groups on age, painful surgical steps, visual analog scale score, surgeon's score, post-operative inflammation, and average ultrasound time during phacoemulsification. However, the group A patients fare far better than group B on endothelial cell loss and augmentation in mydriasis. It compares the efficacy and safety of intracameral ropivacaine 0.1% to lignocaine 1% under augmented topical anesthesia for first time. It shows that intracameral ropivacaine and lignocaine both are equally effective in providing analgesia during phacoemulsification. However, intracameral ropivacaine is superior to corneal endothelial safety and augmenting mydriasis than lignocaine.
You have not mentioned anything about the systemic effects, especially if you're giving it both topically and all these local anesthetics. We need to know the systemic toxicity. Is it more or less? And what does the literature say?
Ma'am,
Because
actually,
it has been used in other fields, isn't it? It's not just ours.
Yes, ma'am. So I have used only 0.2 ml of intracameral injection, 0.2 ml of intracameral, 1% lignocaine was given, and 0.1%.
I know, whatever the dose, because you're
Yes.
directly, once it's in an open eye, the absorption is quite a bit. And systemic toxicity is you need to monitor, and also the duration of the analgesia. What was its effect? Because these were used for its better duration. I mean, this newer anesthetic, ropivacaine, is
Yes,
in the rest of the fields, surgical fields, it is about duration of the analgesia. But did we see that? And because that would be giving an added advantage, I am not sure. We should mention that.
Can I have one
Sir.
question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any case of PCR, just to know that it goes into the vitreous cavity or cause any posterior segment problem also?
Sir, actually, we have excluded that patient from the study. We treated that patient according for rest of the cases, but we only included the patient that have uncomplicated surgery. So we have not taken that into study.
Knowledge, just for our knowledge.
No, sir, no patients were
How
there.
do you explain, one more question, last one. How do you explain this sustained mydriasis? Was it endpoint you measured? Is it known in to cause, that's an important advantage to my mind.
Ma'am, we have measured the pre-operative when patient came to table. So we measured the mydriasis and we measured the mydriasis just after intracameral
I know, but
injection.
what is the explanation? Is it a freak one, or does it have some kind of steroidal effect or what?
Ma'am, it has a long-acting effect, so we can expect the effect to be there for a longer time than lignocaine, ma'am. So this new drug is more similar to bupivacaine, not like lignocaine. It's long-acting, ma'am.
That's what we have seen the duration.
Okay, thank you. The next FP 1969. Ready?
Dr. Rohan,
But I think Dr. Rohan is not here, sir.
not there. Dr. Swati is also not there.
Swati,
Okay, one more chance.
Swati is not available till now.
No.
Then we can go for keynote
So,
address.
sir, this group is over, sir. Till within time.
Yes, we'll go for keynote.
And sir, keynote address will shift to different sir. Dr. Amar Pujari and Dr. Sachindra Lysiram.
So,
they will go to the shift to different lists. In the semi-final, they will meet.
no, is anyone present for presentation?
Actually, sir, as instructed, they are shift to semi-final, sir. They will be present in the semi-final.
Oh, they are presenting in the semi-final, not in this round.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that is fine. OSN Ophthalmology Society. What about that?
What does OSN stand for?
Ophthalmological Society of Manipur.
Manipur. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Are they ready with their presentation?
No, not there.
She's there.
Not responding.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry,
I saw somebody on the screen. Yes, ma'am.
Somebody's birthday also today. Okay.
We're having virtual cake.
Cake for breakfast.
Doctor, we are waiting for Dr. Sachindra Lyshram's presentation. Can you screen share, please? Dr. Sachindra, are you here? Please screen share, doctor.
Is there anyone to present or we'll close the session?
Keynote also, is it?
Ma'am, keynote, they said they are presenting next semi-final.
Oh,
Not present.
Answer. Okay.
okay.
And one more, that last OSM Ophthalmic Society also response, or can the AV media tell us if they're loaded or?
Unmute the last speaker, please.
Dr. Rohan Bauri and Dr. Swati, are you available, sir?
Dr. Rohan, Dr. Swati.
So, semi-final is that. And sir,
Dr. Ramesh will wait, or what will we do?
No, we'll close down.
Yeah, we had to close down. If the speaker
Yes.
is not there, we had to.
Yes,
Yeah,
there
we
is
have
no
given
point
enough
in
time for
waiting.
the speaker and the 10th speaker, I think. So, thank you very much, panelists.
the name of the winner will be posted in the notice.
Yes, sir. As we know that we have to go send it to an email which has come, as well as the WhatsApp group individually. So we can do that. And thank you, everybody. It was a nice session of Cataract 3.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity, the organizers. The
Thank you.
papers were of good standard.